Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about digital audio mixers. In my previous video, I explained what an analog mixer is, the audio processing it performs, and what environment and situations that they're typically used in. I'll put the link to that video down below. Well, today I'm going to talk about the digital version of the audio mixer. The good news is that the core functions are the same as their analog siblings, but with a lot more flexibilities and options that'll take your audio processing and productions to the next level. So let's get started. Digital audio mixers have two primary functions. First, they route and process audio signals just like analog mixers. And secondly, they provide additional capabilities to improve workflow processes while minimizing any noise that may be found in the audio circuit. As with any profession, the goal is to create consistent and repeatable success. In the world of pro audio, that success is meeting the needs of the customer and the demands of the event. More specifically, you want to be able to project sound anywhere the customer needs and ensure the quality of the sound is free from distracting anomalies such as noise, distortion, and dropouts. The digital audio mixer differs from the analog mixer in three main areas: size, recall capabilities, and its sound quality. More specifically, its ability to not rely on external audio processing equipment. But before I go into detail about these digital mixers, let's check out the sponsor for this video, Tapscott Media Services. The wonderful thing about digital mixers is their ability to do a lot in a compact form factor. The reason they can do this is because a single button, switch, or slider on a digital mixer performs multiple functions. Because of this, there are less buttons, switches, or sliders needed to perform the same task as on the larger analog mixers, which results in a smaller footprint. With the smaller footprint, things are a lot easier to transport to mobile gigs and concerts. Also, with a smaller size, more can be packed into your vehicle in case there are multiple simultaneous venues at one gig. The second aspect of a digital mixer is one of my favorites, and that is its ability for instant recall. Whether you're working in a controlled environment like a recording studio or in a live environment like a concert or a streaming engagement, consistent sound is what is expected of you by the client. With an analog mixer, this consistent sound is achieved by using what's called track sheets, which is a graphic printout of the fixtures on the mixer. After your sound check and show, you annotate what directions knobs were turned and what levels faders were placed so that you would get close to the sound quality on the following shows and events. As you can tell, this is very time consuming, causing you to arrive extra hours early before every show to match the analog board to the annotations of the track sheet. Now with a digital mixer, every setting is stored as a scene by the onboard computer. So all you have to do is hit save before shutting down, and all your settings will be there waiting for you when you return. To be honest, most digital mixers save automatically, so at a minimum, when you return to the mixer, all of the settings will be the way they were when you last operated the mixer. You can store scenes for particular parts of an event or concert. For example, in a church service, you can recall a save scene for the music portion of the service, and then recall another save scene when it's just the pastor speaking, all with the touch of one button. On some mixers, you can export your save scenes onto a thumb drive or even text them to use them on other digital mixers of the same model. Think about it. If you have a client in 5 separate ballrooms of the convention center, it will be quicker for me to digitally recall the previous night's settings than to manually make adjustments based on the track sheet of all 5 events. The third major difference is the sound quality and self-contained audio processing of the digital mixer. With digital mixers, one of the first pieces of hardware that the audio signal meets is the analog to digital converter, or AD converter. In the analog world, audio stays in the form of voltage that is constantly varying in both amplitude and polarity. In the digital world, that same audio signal no longer varies. Instead, it's a series of snapshots that's taken in a moment in time. These snapshots are called samples. Once the analog signal enters the AD converter, the converter takes a snapshot or sample of the varying analog signal. Depending on the capabilities of the particular digital mixer, the AD converter can take up to 96,000 snapshots or samples per second. Each of these samples are then placed on a grid that represents time on one axis and amplitude on the other. The granularity or number of boxes on this grid determine the computer's ability to reproduce the analog signal as a digital byte, creating as close of a replica of the original analog signal as possible. The number of boxes on this grid is referred to as the bit depth of the analog digital converter. The higher the bit depth, the higher the detail and fidelity of the newly created sample. You may ask, why go through all this to copy and convert an analog signal when you already have the original signal? Well, overall, the reason is that once the computer has converted the analog signal into a digital signal, the computer sees the results as zeros and ones, or binary code. And when that happens, the only limitation to manipulating the audio signal is the processing power of the onboard computer. A great example of manipulating an audio signal that has been converted into a digital signal is that the computer's bit depth can be programmed to not recognize any noise that the original analog signal may have picked up, resulting in a much cleaner sound. Bye-bye, tape hiss. The final example of audio manipulation that is a great perk of digital mixers is digital mixers can manipulate those zeros and ones in thousands of ways to make the signal sound different. Like being played in a cathedral, or out of space, in a living room, or even in a basement. The computer can make it sound like it's compressed, or like certain frequencies are boosted or cut like an EQ, or that they only come on after a certain volume, like a gate. Once it was discovered that the computer could do all of these things, someone had the great idea of making some cool graphic representations of hardware. And voila, the onboard effects plugin was born. That meant no more having to route the signal outside of the mixer to more heavy hardware and risk having noise being reintroduced into the signal. All the processing was now done inside of the digital mixer. Let's take a look at the digital audio system and see its capabilities in use. Okay, so as you can see here, the digital audio mixer has a very small footprint. It only takes up 4 rack spaces. It has the usual connectivity using XLR cables and 1/4-inch jacks. We got main outputs, we got auxiliary sends, and we have individual channel inputs, as well as a couple of line inputs and some headphone outputs. The mixer itself is by Behringer. It's an X-Air XR18. It's controlled remotely either through a cabled Ethernet or through a Wi-Fi hotspot, which is built into the machine itself. You can connect it to a computer using a USB to multi-track to Pro Tools or Logic, and you can also have on-stage personal monitoring systems using a single Cat6 cable. The mixer communicates with its iPad using this antenna that's included. And the iPad itself has a software that is very similar to an actual mixer. It's got faders, aux sends, mute buttons, and also it has effects on board. This iPad I can take out into the audience and I can mix inside the sanctuary. I can mix the sources such as the wireless mics for the vocalists that are transmitting wirelessly back to the sound booth. We have a pianist that's also transmitting wirelessly back to the sound booth. And we also have a drummer. He plays a digital drum set and it's by Alesis, and that too is transmitting wirelessly back to the sound booth. Additionally, we also have an acoustic guitarist who has an adapter that is also transmitting wirelessly back to the sound booth. Now, the output of the mixer itself has an aux send that we set up for the subwoofers, and we also set up an aux send for the stage monitor mix for the singers to hear themselves. We have a total of 3 monitors going across the stage for full coverage. We also have our mains that are hung inside the rafters as well. And we have a total of 3 mains that are hung. The digital mixer allows me to be able to either mix from inside the sanctuary or inside the sound booth. So I'm able to be mobile while still maintaining connectivity with the digital mixer. This is a perfect option for a medium to a small size venue such as this. Now, this video wasn't about whether or not a digital mixer is better than an analog mixer. Instead, it was about the differences between the two so that you would know them and be more informed in making a decision when choosing one for your audio production needs. I talked about several key points. I talked about the fact that a digital mixer is smaller because each button, fader, and knob has multi-function capabilities. I talked about the fact that digital mixers have instant recall, which makes setting up a lot easier. That you can take those settings and those scenes and you can store them on a thumb drive or even text them to your buddy who's working another gig on the same mixer down the hall. I talked about how there's onboard processing, does everything from effects processing like plugins to making sure that noise and clipping are no longer a problem. Well, not a major problem. But I just wanted to make sure that what I've learned through the years, that I can share them with you. And if what I'm sharing with you helps, hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that when I upload another video, you can arm yourself with more knowledge so that you can continue to grow in your audio productions. Remember, the mastery of pro audio is not a talent. Instead, it's a well-rehearsed skill. I'm John Chandler. See you in the next video.